In this month's audio extra, we have an informal interview and conversation with Angela De Souza, author of the book, The Tale of a Church Planter. And the subtitle of this book is The Ups, Downs, Frustration, Joys, and Everything in Between on the Roller Coaster Ride of Church Planting. Well, today I'm joined by Steve Moore. Steve is the president of Missionexus, and Steve gives executive oversight and direction to all of Missionexus activities. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Marv. I join you today in welcoming our listeners to this month's audio extra for your topical categories. First, we look at a book that relates to spiritual formation, and then a book that touches on some aspect of personal or organizational leadership, and then finally a book that touches on ministry or missions. This month we're focused on the missions and ministry category with the book The Tale of a Church Planter. And in Leader's Edge book summary, we've already provided a brief summary of the book along with what Marv thinks is the best chapter, the best quotes, the best illustration, the best idea, and the best takeaway. And today in this recorded conversation, we'd like to go a little bit deeper into this topic, and so we invite you to make yourself comfortable as you listen in. Marv, why don't you go ahead and more formally introduce our special guest today, and then we'll dive right into the conversation.
Well, sure, Steve, and I am so pleased to introduce to you Angela De Souza. She is the executive pastor of D7 Church, which is in England, and is the mother of four. Angela is the author, also an author in England with her Brazilian husband, Eric, who also helps to pastor their church. Angela has published several other books besides this one, especially those that deal with issues that keep women from being free in today's world. She is also a blogger and a host of an annual UK Women's Conference. So, Angela, we eagerly want to get acquainted with you and explore this book with you together. Welcome to this edition of Audio Extra.
Hi, Marv. Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for your invitation to join you today.
Great to have you. Angela, we're going to start at the kind of 30,000-foot level with some big picture kind of general questions before we set up some content-specific conversation about your book. First of all, tell us, why did you write this book, or was there some particular event or that sparked it? How did the book come about?
Well, I love to write, and I love our story, the journey of our church, so it made sense to me to keep a record of our journey, and this very naturally progressed into a book. I also thought sharing our story would help other churches as well.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, not every book can be kind of boiled down to a phrase or a sentence, soundbite kind of answer, but if you were going to try to describe the one big idea or the overarching thesis for your book, how would you describe that?
I think the one big idea is that there's no manual for church planting. Church planting is really challenging. There's no recipe. There's no formula. You have to do what God wants you to do when He wants you to do it, and He does this differently with every single church.
One more question before Marv jumps into the book itself. When you think about the people who are going to read this book, most of whom you won't have face-to-face personal kind of conversation with, and you think about the impact you'd like to have on their lives as a result of reading this book, what are the changes that you hope to inspire or produce in the lives of people who read this?
I think for me the most important thing is that before anybody jumps into planting a church, that they really count the cost. And I hope that the book shows the cost, the price that has to be paid, that it's not easy, that it can be difficult and it can be very challenging. It's a hard road to travel, but the rewards are extremely fulfilling. I really would hope that people would consider that before jumping into it.
Well, thank you for that, Angela. That's very good advice. So true for church planters. You know, your title of the book suggests that church planting's like a roller coaster ride. Tell us a little bit about some of the ups and some of the joys of being a woman church planter, specifically for you. What has brought a sense of excitement to you as you've done this ministry?
I think with regards to being a woman, I couldn't find anything that's specific to being a woman. I think you just jump into it, you get on with the work, whatever needs to be done. And so it's very hard to say that it's definitely for a woman. But anyone who is willing can do it, whether male or female, young or old. The big joy in the journey is seeing life change. And it's only for that reason that we manage to keep going.
Angela, of course, there's a flip side. There's not only an upside, but there are some challenging down moments that carry along this roller coaster metaphor. Share some of the more authentic, vulnerable kind of thoughts that you can. And if there is a gender-specific expression of that as being a woman involved in a church plant, we'd love to hear that too. But what are some of the other sides besides the ups?
In this area, there is a specific to being a woman, and that is the lack of authority. That can be a struggle at times. People tend to take instructions from my husband, but not as willingly from me. It wastes a lot of time having to ask my husband to give someone the same instructions that I had given them. But thankfully, he backs me all the way. It is difficult, and particularly in that area of authority.
Well, that's very interesting. I've never really thought of it in that perspective of the authority, so thank you for that. Angela, in the early part of the book, you say it never occurred to you that it was possible to have a good, quote, sales pitch for God, but not be living what you were selling. How do specific character issues as a woman play into a church plant?
Submission. I think that's the one big thing. It's essential as a woman. Submission is essential. Submission to God, submission to my husband, and submission to the plan that we've put in place.
Angela, I want to give you a quote that you use in the book. You mentioned one key we have found with people in general in our church is use them or lose them. You say that if people are ready to serve and they don't get used, then they'll find another place where they'll move on to another church, or maybe even worst case scenario, they'll fall back into their sin. Explain how you learned those lessons, or give us some examples of the dangers of not really allowing people to serve when they're ready.
In some extreme cases, we've had some drug addicts. One even went back to prison. Sadly, we have many ex-addicts and a small team, and we've not managed to keep everyone busy during the week, which is what a recovering addict needs. In this case, it's really, really important to keep them busy, to use them for their own benefit, even if it's simple things like just hoovering the carpet or doing something so that they feel a part of something healthy. If we don't give them enough to do, they often fall back into their old patterns. In less extreme cases, we've seen people leave our church simply because they were not used in the capacity that they wanted to be used. We always give people menial tasks such as cleaning the toilet or driving people to and from church, cooking a meal, things like that, just to simply test their attitude before we offer them roles of influence. Some people don't like this, and so they leave. They move on to another church where their ministry can be recognized.
You know, and Angela, I like the way you say it in the book on that regard, that they either go somewhere else or they find their way back into their sin. So it's interesting that someone's always going somewhere, are they not?
Yes.
You know, Angela, there's another quote that you have here. You touched on the issue of being content and also having balance. And here's a quote from your book in that regard. You say this: being content in whatever state you are in is an essential key to enjoying the ride. Getting stressed out when money is low can drive you insane, and feeling the hurt every time one of your precious sheep leaves the sheepfold can hurt badly. Equally, getting caught up in pride and thinking that any success is yours can cripple you, so can other such sin. Balance, here's what you say at the end of that: balance is essential to enjoying the ride. Well, Angela, again, as a woman church planter, You've seen all this, obviously, because you were able to write on it. How have you learned to bring a sense of balance to your life so that you could enjoy this ride of church planting?
One of the main things that keeps me balanced is enjoying time at home with my children. It really keeps things in perspective for me. Simple things like playing in the garden with them helps me feel closer to God as well, and reminds me how much He wants me to play in His beautiful garden. God isn't pleased when I'm stressed out or overworked. He's most pleased when I enjoy the life that He has given me. So keeping this in mind helps me enjoy simple, everyday, day-to-day things, even washing the dishes and caring for my home and my family. That keeps things balanced.
Angela, there's another quote from the book where you make an illustration and you talk about the fact that you can build a church without an intimate relationship with God, and then you ask the question, but why would you want to? And you kind of parallel this with marriage, saying, you might be able to build a marriage without an intimate relationship with your spouse, but why would you want to? It's the intimacy that actually makes the relationship. It's what makes it fun. It's what bears the fruit. Talk about the distractions that you think people should be aware of in ministry in general, church planning in particular, that could really take us away from that depth of intimacy that we want to have with God.
The biggest distraction, I believe, is and always will be busyness. It's the age-old story of Mary and Martha. Nothing's changed, probably never will. We need to prioritize just being. And many times it can be our doing, even in serving Him, in doing things for church, in ministry. Even those things can take us away from Him. And so busyness, it's one of the subtle things that can come in. Because we're serving God, we think we're intimate with Him, but we're not. We're running around doing. We're being a Martha. So I find it really important to make sure that in serving Him is not the very thing that's taking me away from intimacy with Him.
Now, Angela, picking up on that, you wear several hats, obviously. You're a wife, you're a mother, you're a church planter, and you're probably a slew of other things as well, but especially in relating to your family. Do you feel that you sacrificed your family on the altar of ministry as you planted this church and have done other ministry as well? And if not, how did you prevent that from happening?
We have made sacrifices as a family, that's for sure. But our family is stronger because of it. Tough times have brought us closer together. Our children have a different level of faith because they've had to have faith with us. They've had to go on the journey with us. When we first planted the church, we discussed it as a family and agreed as a family that we were willing to do this. We explained to the children that it was going to be a different life, that they wouldn't have an ordinary childhood. Our eldest two were teenagers at the time, and so it was a family agreement. We agreed that we wanted to plant this church as a family, but we also put some boundaries in place right at the onset. So what we do in our family is we have a weekly family day. We take Saturdays off, and it's family day. And the children know that no matter how hard we push ourselves during the week, that day is always there for them. And then as far as marriage goes, Eric and I, we have a weekly date night. And again, it's not negotiable. And so we know that even if we are missing each other during the week, we know that we're always going to have that time every single week to invest in our marriage. And that has saved us. That has really helped us over the years.
Well, do you mind me then just saying this? Obviously you've been very intentional and very proactive in this regard, and that's so good to hear.
Yes.
And so obviously it has paid off dividends for you and your husband and your children and all. Anything that you might have regretted that you could have done better or could have been different, or are there no regrets?
I honestly can't think of any. I think there have been hard times, definitely, but there's good that has come out of all of them. So I can't actually say that there are any regrets.
Well, that's wonderful. Great.
You have had a lot of experiences. You referred to some of them here. I'm fascinated with the journey of personal development, how people respond to life-shaping experiences and how those experiences help a person grow. Talk for a moment about how the experiences that you've had in planting this church have helped you grow as a wife, as a mother, as a minister.
I think the main thing is church planting forced me to grow up and deal with some childish attitudes. Many times I would rebuke myself by saying, surely a church leader should be past that by now. And so it's really helped me in my personal walk, in my character. It's given me motivation to want to be more and to put some things behind me that perhaps I would have allowed to linger a little longer if I hadn't been in a leadership position. As a mother, I can't say that I've grown because of church planting, but rather that the church has grown through me being a mother. I say this because I see my role as a church leader primarily as simply being a mother to the people in our church. I simply take the love and care that I have for my family and include others in it. As a wife, I've learned to cope with different dynamics in our marriage. I think it's been fantastic for our marriage. It's been really good on many levels. I can't think of any specific examples at the moment, but definitely I've grown as a wife. Out of all these areas, I've grown most as a leader. I really had to learn to lead more than ever before.
Very good. Angela, thank you for going through every one of those categories because obviously specifically there's been growth in every one of them. You know, just before we begin to wind down this interview, I just want to make this comment. Your book is making its way through the church planting circuit here in North America now, and I'm certainly hoping that many will take advantage of reading this book because of this. But I just want to say that it's receiving some very favorable reviews. It's so honest and transparent. It's something that's just been kind of a refreshing win for us engaged in church planting. So I want to thank you for writing the book. Steve, over to you.
Angela, we're always on the lookout for good books, sometimes just for us to read, other times we include them in book reviews. And so when we interview an author, we're always curious to find out what you're reading. What are the top few books that have been making an impact on your life of late?
I'm a huge Max Lucado fan, so I'm always reading one of his books, even if I have several other books on the go. Max has a way of bringing the Bible to life, and he especially helps me love Jesus even more. And so I try to constantly be reading one of his books. At the moment, I'm reading his book, Traveling Light, which is a fantastic book based on Psalm 23. More recently, I read a book that really impacted me. It was based on the Blessing series by Dr. John Trent, I think it was. But that was a fantastic book as well. It was a real eye-opener.
And I know that the book we've been talking to you about is not your first book, and it's my experience that authors like you tend to have other things in the hopper. Just curious if you have any ideas that are germinating for future books, or if you have any projects that are already in motion that would be worth talking about.
I actually have several books on the go at the moment. I'm writing Being a Friend, which is a study for our women's ministry that I'm working through, where we delve into what the Bible has to say about friendship and how we can have godly friendships and be godly friends. I'm also working on a novel called Christian and Arabella that I hopefully will blow people away with a message of the love of God. I'm aiming for the secular market with that book, but with a very powerful gospel message through it. And then, of course, I'm going to continue the Tale series. I'm going to do the Tale of a Church Leader, which is the next in the series, which will focus more specifically on the leadership side of church. And then I hope to do the Tale of a Church Builder and the Tale of a Preacher too.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate your ministry through writing, and as Marv has said, this book is certainly one worth profiling, and I'm confident the others that are in your pipeline will be as well. So thank you, Angela, for allowing us to go under the dust cover of your book, The Tale of a Church Planter. Really appreciate talking with you.
Thank you for having me.
I want to encourage our listeners to use the discussion questions that come with Leader's Edge Book Summary Online to stimulate growth-related conversations with your team. You might want to ask your staff to listen to this audio extra before your next meeting and then build on it with a few minutes of growth-related conversation with your team.
Well, once again, the book is entitled The Tale of a Church Planter, the ups, downs, frustrations, joys, and everything in between on the roller coaster ride of church planting. You can purchase it at your local Christian bookstore, or maybe you could go to your favorite online vendor and get it there, an electronic version. You ought to get one not only for yourself, but I suggest that you also buy one as a gift for your organizational library. Don't forget to visit our website, missionexus.org, to register for the North American Missions Leaders Conference. We'll love to see you in Chicago, September 20 through 22 of this year, for that conference that we have entitled Recalibrate. Finally, a special thanks to the Visual Church for their sponsorship of Leaders Edge Audio Extra. Check out thevisualchurch.com for workshop backgrounds, video narratives, and custom projects. That's the Visual Church, where seeing is believing. Well, we will be visiting your inbox with another Leaders Edge book summary next month, and we hope that it finds way to your MP3 player of your choice the next time that you are in with us. That will do it for this edition of Leaders Edge Extra. On behalf of our team at Missionexus, we wish you a good day and God bless as you go forward with Him.